UFO sightings seem to be in an uptick over the past several years. UFOs and the fascination with the concept of extraterrestrial visitors isn't new. We have always been intrigued as a human race with what may exist beyond our world. However, with the extremely advanced technology that the humans have displayed since the 1950s, this new anti-gravity jet remains an unknown identifiable object, a UFO. Although governments have established bodies to investigate the many UFO sightings, none seems to accurately answer the questions that have been intriguing humans for far longer. Do these UFOs have an extraterrestrial origin? Join us as we delve into the wonders of the anti-gravity jet that defies science, the TR-3B Black Manta. Is the Black Manta another UFO? Let's take a look, shall we? Over time, the TR-3A may have been a reasonably grounded story about a stealthy reconnaissance platform designed to operate as an alien. Still, this story gets a whole lot stranger when discussing the long-standing claims of the TR-3B. Unlike the turbojet-powered TR-3A, the TR-3B is supposedly powered by a reverse-engineered anti-gravity drive that was recovered from a crashed alien spacecraft. The TR-3B is where reports of UAP performing seemingly impossible aerial maneuvers intersect with stories about very real aircraft. There are many claims over the internet about the TR-3B's anti-gravity drive, most of which involve using nuclear power to rotate highly pressurized mercury to produce plasma and, in turn, a gravitational field. Most stories about the TR-3B's development revolve around Operation Paperclip, the program that saw the United States absorb more than 1,500 German scientists and engineers at the end of World War II to continue work on various defense technologies. We've discussed in the past how myths about advanced Nazi technologies were born in the years after World War II, and as the folklore surrounding this anti-gravity platform matured over the years, it was not exempt from the reach of Wunderwaffe's claims. Despite how silly these claims sound, there is evidence to substantiate some of their elements. Some believers claim that powering the TR-3B would require massive amounts of power production, more than we could possibly produce with the current aviation engines and human technology. Insert the conspiracy rumor mill. But the Black Manta is a real concept and has a real prototype. The TR-3B Black Manta aircraft is intended for reconnaissance tasks that include both strategic and operational tactical missions. Due to the comprehensive use of all available stealth technologies, it can covertly overcome the enemy's air defense, penetrate deep into its territory undetected, and conduct photographic, infrared, and radio electronic reconnaissance of ground targets and objects. Evidence and additional information are available on various news outlets. Aircraft with supersonic speeds are often mistaken for UFOs. American experts consider the optimal reconnaissance aircraft as one that can be used in any region when taking off from air bases, including ships. The Aurora, which is also one of these strategic surveillance aircraft, was developed for these missions in extremely remote locations, where stealth and maneuverability was crucial. But these new aircraft don't come cheaply. We are talking millions of dollars of investments. Prototypes and research are required to produce these aircraft. Both the Aurora and the Black Manta, TR-3A and TR-3B respectively, should be able to effectively overcome any enemy's anti-aircraft defense at supersonic speeds. Now, in the case of the Aurora, it can reach heights of 27,000 to 36,000 meters. That's 88,583 to 118,110 feet. And it can conduct surveillance in extreme detail from those heights. These incredibly impressive aircraft are supposed to covertly acquire, process, analyze, and transmit intelligence information for centralized use in real time, and simultaneously be as resistant as possible against surveillance and weapons of the enemy's air defense, and send PVO, or digitized images, of the target area directly to the command center. Currently, the B-2 and F-116 are used for these type of missions. Such aircraft, intended primarily for use in large-scale armed conflicts, can only fulfill some aerial surveillance tasks to the full extent, especially tactical ones. Hence why an asset like the Black Manta or Aurora is critical to get on the military market. For this reason, the B-2 and F-116 are too costly for local disputes, and their operation for these purposes could be more effective. Due to their high operating costs, their predecessors, such as the SR-71 Blackbird, were retired from service. It is assumed that TR-3A aircraft will work either in close cooperation with operational tactical aircraft or in their support, and above all, as a source of accurate information about ground targets for stealth bombers. In addition, the TR-3A, based on the Grumman-Northrop THAP, is believed to be a stealthy, triangular vehicle, about 42 feet long and 14 feet high, with a 60 to 65-foot wingspan. The reconnaissance aircraft reportedly has a range of more than 3,000 nautical miles, which is about 3,050 linear miles. That's a pretty decent range for an aircraft that doesn't have massive fuel tanks. Today, the American TR-3B Black Mantas are believed to have been temporarily deployed to Alaska, Britain, Panama, and Okinawa. More recently, they are believed to have supported F-117A operations in the Persian Gulf War. This information and descriptions are mostly available from the public, professional press, and the internet. Hence, the TR-3B Black Manta remains unconfirmed by official sources, leading to ongoing debates about its authenticity and connections with aliens and UFOs. Speaking of UFOs, let's take a look at sightings throughout history, shall we? Sightings of UFOs date back all the way to 1450 BC at Jebel Barkal, located in ancient Egypt, which is current-day Sudan. After conquering the Nubian city of Napata, Thutmose III had a stela erected at the Temple of Amun, beneath the Jebel Barkal outcropping. A stela is a stone or wooden slab, more often than not taller than it is wide, and was erected in the ancient world as a monument. The stela at Jebel Barkal describes how a star came down to set fire to Thutmose's enemies. This has been cited by deemed UFO experts via the purported Thule papyrus, which was likely a fraud. This alleged translation, published in issue 41 of the Fortean Society's magazine Doubt, used such Fortean tropes as circles of fire and fish that fell down from the sky. In 76 BC, reports of sparks falling from the sky were reported in the Asian continent of the Roman Empire. According to Pliny the Elder, a spark fell from a star and grew as it descended until it appeared to be the size of the moon. It then ascended and transformed into a torch. Later on in the 20th century, astronomer Richard Struthers interpreted the report as a description of a bolide. A bolide is normally taken to mean an exceptionally bright meteor. In 1897, in the small American town of Aurora, Texas, an event stranger than fiction occurred when a craft plummeted from the sky. The pilot was said to be not of this world, yet is laid to rest in the town cemetery. Anyone want to go on an adventure to Texas to find the gravestone? In 1803, local fishermen in the province of Hitachi in Japan reportedly found a closed vessel with small windows adrift. They said when they investigated it that a beautiful young woman with red and white hair and dressed in strange clothes emerged, holding a square box that no one was allowed to touch, and that she spoke to them in a language that they had never heard before. This account appears in 4 separate texts. Similarly, on May 18, 1946, almost a year after the end of the Second World War, Gösta Karlsson of Ängelholm, Sweden, reported seeing a flying saucer and its alien passengers land in the woods of Kronoskogen. Today, a concrete spacecraft model remains at the very site. However, there is this well-known UFO sighting in 1947, probably the most famous one in history. It was accomplished by pilot Kenneth Arnold, who claimed to see a group of 9 high-speed objects near Mount Rainier in Washington while flying his Call Air A2. Arnold spotted the disc-shaped objects moving at an estimated tremendous speed of 1,932 kilometers per hour. That's approximately 1,200 miles per hour. It was initially depicted as saucer-shaped. Many broadcasting houses use the term saucers skipping on water, or flying saucers, to report these UFOs. In that same year, 1947, barely 2 weeks later, W. Mac Brazel heard about Arnold's story and recalled that he had found the crumpled silvery remains of an aircraft scattered over his ranch near Roswell, New Mexico. It was initially hard to believe, but amidst doubt, the finds were gathered and quickly taken to Fort Worth Army airfields for analysis. This sighting and recovery of UFOs has sparked a cult-like following. Movies and numerous TV shows have been inspired by the accounts of Roswell. Even the town has embraced the aliens and turned itself into a tourist destination. Side note, if you have not been to Roswell, we highly recommend it, especially if you like hokey tourist traps. You will be able to see a meteor crater on your way to Roswell. Sightings of unidentified aerial phenomena have increased. However, the U.S. Air Force began investigating these reports, tagging them as Project Sign in 1947. The initial thoughts were that the UFOs were most likely sophisticated Soviet aircraft, and the Project Sign was to gather intel on the Soviets. However, some researchers suggested that they might be spacecraft from other worlds, the so-called extraterrestrial hypothesis, ETH. Within a year, Project Sign gathered interest and was succeeded by Project Grudge in 1949. Project Grudge was short-lived, however. It was intended to alleviate public anxiety over UFOs and persuade the public that UFOs constituted nothing unusual or extraordinary. It was replaced by Project Blue Book in December of 1949. Project Blue Book was active from March of 1952 to its termination on December 17, 1969. It was headquartered at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio and led by Captain Edward J. Ruppelt. This project had two main objectives: to determine if UFOs were a threat to national security and to scientifically analyze UFO-related data. At the end of the project, the Air Force came to the conclusion that no UFO reported, investigated, and evaluated by the Air Force was ever a threat to U.S. national security. There was no evidence that was collected by the Air Force that sightings categorized as unidentified represented technological developments or principles beyond the range of modern scientific knowledge. There was no evidence stating that sightings categorized as unidentified were extraterrestrial vehicles. By the time Project Blue Book ended, it had collected 12,618 UFO reports and determined that most of them were misidentifications of natural phenomena, clouds, stars, meteors, etc., or human-built aircraft. According to the National Reconnaissance Office, or NRO, a number of the reports could be explained by flights of the formerly super-secret reconnaissance planes U-2 and A-12. 701 reports were classified as unexplained, even after extensive analysis. The UFO reports have been archived and are available under the Freedom of Information Act, but names and other personal information of all witnesses have been redacted. We will let you come to your own conclusions of these reports. By 1954, the Cold War was in full swing, and UFOs had become a world sensation. On November 27, 1954, a soccer game was interrupted in Florence, Italy, when a group of high-speed, cigar-shaped UFOs paused and hovered above the Stadio Artemio Franchi, terrifying the crowd as they fell silent at the unexplained sight. This went on for several minutes before silvery glitter fell down over the stadium and covered everything. The silvery substance was also seen falling elsewhere the same day. After that, shiny balls had been seen. It has been inferred and suggested that the most likely explanation was that the silk of mass-migrating spiders had mobilized high in the atmosphere. This suggestion was, however, contradicted by the chemical analysis of the substance that was undertaken at the Institute of Chemical Analysis at the University of Florence, which found it to contain boron, silicon, calcium, and magnesium, which, according to science writer Philip Ball, don't seem to match with the spider theory. Magnesium and calcium are fairly common elements in living bodies. However, boron and silicon, much less so. If these were the main elements that the white fluff contained, it doesn't sound to us as though they'd come from spiders. Wouldn't you agree? Again, in 1959, high in the rural mountains of Russia, at Dyatlov Pass, 9 hikers were found dead. Some were naked, and some with missing body parts. It was recorded that strange lights and radiation levels from a UFO had scattered their tents and caused the tragedy. An investigation by Soviet authorities after the bodies were discovered determined that 6 of them had died from hypothermia, while the other 3 had been killed by extreme physical trauma. 1 victim had massive skull damage. 2 had severe gaping chest wounds, and another had a crack in his skull. 4 of the bodies were found lying in running water in a sub-zero creek, and 3 of the 4 had damaged soft tissue of the head and face. 2 of the bodies had missing eyes, 1 had a missing tongue, and 1 had missing eyebrows. The investigation concluded that a compelling natural force had caused the deaths. However, in 2019, Russia reopened the case, and its conclusions were presented in July of 2020, stating that an avalanche had led to the deaths. We aren't sure how an avalanche can take out a person's tongue or remove their eyebrows. Again, we will let you come to your own conclusions on this one. These occurrences created room to question the abilities of Project Grudge. It was then replaced by the longest-lived of the official inquiries into UFOs, Project Blue Book, with its headquarters in Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. Project Blue Book compiled reports of more than 12,000 sightings or events from 1952 to 1969. Each of these sightings was ultimately classified as either identified with a known astronomical, atmospheric, or artificial phenomenon, that is, a human-caused phenomenon, or as unidentified. The unidentified portion means that approximately 6% included cases with insufficient information to identify a known phenomenon. A Polish farmer in Emilson was out driving a horse-drawn cart in the early hours of May 10, 1978. He claims he was abducted by short, green-faced humanoid beings speaking an unearthly language. The 2 beings jumped onto Volsky's cart and sat next to him and started to speak in this strange language. At first, he had mistaken them for foreigners because of their slanted eyes and prominent cheekbones. Volsky drove his cart with the 2 beings aboard to a clearing where he says a large object was hovering. Their craft was pure white, smooth, and hummed as it hovered. The media ignored him then. However, a memorial is now at the site. There are groups of people that are intrigued and obsessed with UFOs. There have been thousands of sightings of UFOs across the country and the world. Experts initially dismissed these as tall tales that have begun to cause worldwide panic. Significantly, there was the U.S. government's 2021 assessment of UFOs, which have been rebranded, rather disappointingly in our opinion, as the more sober-sounding Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, or UAPs for short. Now, NASA is expected to release the results of its first-ever study into unidentified aerial phenomena. This is the first challenge of analyzing UAPs. The more we look for them, or even think about them, the more we seem to spot them. It is the same phenomena when you buy a white car. You then see more white cars out on the road. While there aren't more, you are just more aware of them because you have a connection to them. Taking the recent COVID-19 pandemic as an example, when scientists looked at the number of UAP sightings across the U.S., they found significant spikes during local lockdowns when people were confined to their homes. It was noted that perhaps people were spending more time outside, gazing at the sky. But the researchers also proposed another explanation. They proposed that the increases directly resulted from people devoting more of their attention to them. This idea is backed up by the finding that the sighting increases began gradually after each lockdown, suggesting that interest built up in the absence of other activities. It also fits the findings that UAP sightings follow other macroeconomic trends, such as recessions. This helps prove that people are more likely to ponder these suspicious objects when in need of distraction or are just plain bored. Meanwhile, the 2022 assessment of UAPs from the U.S. government revealed a dramatic increase in the number of sightings since the first iteration that emerged in 2021. More than 350 UAP reports were received from pilots and other personnel in just 1 year, compared to 144 for the entire 17-year period covered by the initial report. In fact, some officials have observed a new age of UFO mania, raising a shift in perspective. Very few UAPs turn out to be genuinely abnormal. Of the roughly 800 sightings NASA is investigating, only 2 to 5% still need to be explored. According to David Spergel, president of the Simons Foundation and the chair of NASA's unpublished UAP study, many are easily sorted into 2 categories. The first are everyday objects and events that can be identified as balloons, drones, atmospheric phenomena, and anomalies within the camera itself. Whenever Spergel hears of a suspicious incident involving flashing lights, he knows it is most likely to be caused by airplanes. The Foundation has determined people only put flashing lights on things they want people to see. In support of that, the Foundation made it known that when countries such as Ukraine are attacking Russian trenches, or the Russians are attacking Ukrainian cities, they do not put flashing lights on their drones or their military planes. This is to conceal the warcraft movement. The second category is demonstrated by a blunder that befell British astronaut Tim Peake in 2015. He was staring out one of the portholes on a 186-day trip aboard the International Space Station when he noticed lights moving in formation. First, he saw 3, then 4. He later recalled on a BBC chat show, perplexed and believing he had witnessed alien spaceships. However, Peake soon realized that he wasn't looking at distant objects, but tiny droplets. They were Russian urine leaking out of a nearby probe vehicle, where it should have been recycled back into drinking water, and freezing instantly into light-reflecting crystals. Often, the ordinary is transformed into the intriguing through simple optical illusions, such as the reality-shifting power of perspective, as happened with Peake. This can easily morph the planet Venus, almost as big as the Earth but 70 million kilometers, or 44 million miles away, into a flying space object. Similarly, tiny bits of space dandruff, from crystallized water to flakes of insulation, such as those spotted outside the ISS, have previously been mistaken for extraterrestrial intruders approaching on the horizon. A 2017 study of 26,000 people in 24 countries found that 61% of the people in the studied countries believed that there was some form of life on other planets, while 47% believed in the existence of intelligent alien civilizations in our universe. Around a quarter of those surveyed entirely ruled out the possibility of aliens. The rest said they didn't know either way. Interestingly, the survey showed that 68% of Russians, 61% of Mexicans, and 60% of the Chinese population were more likely to believe in extraterrestrials than 45% of Americans, which is incredibly interesting as a majority of the UFO sightings are in the United States. People have not stopped asking if the TR-3B is a myth, a rumor, or an idea of an aircraft in the possession of the United States Air Force. This is where things get interesting. If the rumors are true, there would be several theories surrounding the TR-3B aircraft. Still, none explains it as the anti-gravity jet that defies science. This wraps up our exciting journey behind the scenes of the Black Manta. What do you think of the capabilities of this aircraft if and when it comes to market? Let us know in the comments. And if you learned anything new from our video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more videos.